All right, we are live. Welcome back to another episode of the relationship series where we talk about the matters of the heart and mind. My name is Gina Spataro, and this is my brother Sam. And we have been doing these for a little while now, and it's kind of very appropriate because we have nothing but time to learn and influence and to better ourselves and attach ourselves to people that, we resonate with. And there's a lot of people I would have to say in the past little while that we have been watching, we have been absorbing their content information. Um, and I think little bits of them are now, coming into fruition for ourselves and delivering content that is meaningful. And I think tonight's is very applicable because this is very meaningful to both Sam and I, especially Sam. And I'm going to let you kick it off, Sam. But first and foremost, before you do that, how was your week?
I am having a really good week this week.
Good. What makes
Yeah,
it
yeah,
great?
I'm going full throttle with my one business now that the government's taken off some of the restrictions.
Restrictions? Hmm.
Yeah, and making some good connections in the social media side of things as well, and just feeling really good, like getting out and just back out in nature and connecting with people. Yeah.
Awesome. The beard's looking good.
I think this is the thickest beard I've ever had in my life.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
looking, it's
And
suitable
I
for
can't
you.
even really pinpoint what initiated or inspired me to allow it just to keep growing, because I usually get to a phase where it annoys the heck out of me that I just have to shave it off. But
Mm,
this time that whole process just passed right by me. So
that's too funny. Yeah, I
yeah.
don't think I've ever seen you with one. So do you want to kick off the topic tonight?
Yeah, sure. So I think it's really important to understand that, there's different types of anxieties in life. And
Mhm.
there's multiple times where, especially myself, because I've had extreme levels of anxiety and I didn't really know what it was until it got to that point. And there's a level of like being stressed. There's a level of having like low grade anxiety. And then there's a full blown anxiety attack. And that's a whole nother, thing in itself. There's anxiety disorders, panic disorder, OCD, and so many other different facets. And what seems to happen in relationships, and I know even in mine, because when I had my episodes, I was in my relationship. And I just think I want to share some key things that I dealt with, the things that I felt, the things that I felt were limiting me, and most likely most people who go through it, because everything is very common to what we go through or in the process of anxiety, and the meaning that we ultimately give the experience, which dictates a lot of the times of how we're going to move forward in our life and what that life will look like.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it holds true for anybody. I mean, if you're human, you probably experience some form of anxiety in your life. I mean, there's different severities and there's a reason for it, right? Like the fight or flight, the unknown, which is inevitable in life, and sometimes we like if you're a kid, and you have a big exam coming up, like I'm pretty sure there's some level of anxiety that has been felt, but it's just certain people deal with it differently. The coping
Absolutely.
mechanism.
I think
Yeah.
really what it comes down to, and I really want to touch base on this, is what fuels someone from having just normal anxiety and
Mhm.
getting to that whole nother level. A lot of times has to do with your nature. And
Right.
that means how you perceive the world, how you perceive problems. Is it the end or is it the beginning? Are you an optimist or are you a pessimist?
Mhm.
And a lot of it can have to do with experiences in life. A lot of it can do with genetics, because you can be pre-genetically disposed to a lot of types of anxieties and mental health
Right.
disorders. But there's so many different facets that can bring into light as to why we experience these things. But what gets you caught in that anxiety loop
Mhm.
is the constant repetitious meaning that you give the experience. And that's what I want to share with people today is, I know for myself, when I was at the high of my high with anxieties, you feel helpless. You
Mhm.
feel like this is the end. You feel like you have no power over it.
Yeah.
And, it's almost like, you're fighting the fight. Like you're fighting yourself, right? In
Mhm.
this imagined sort of created, fantasy idea of how the world is perceived and what your problems are supposed to look like and what they mean. So I think it's very important, especially today. It's so prominent in Western societies, and they're talking an increase of mental health, 20, 30% over the next 10, 20 years. So I think it's something very key to touch on, which is, I think at some point right now, especially with what we are all going through with the coronavirus, the lockdowns, and I don't think the world simultaneously has had so much uncertainty at one time. Like I was speaking to a friend of ours who is a health nut. Like, I mean, this would be the last person you would ever think that would have anxiety, and they have insomnia or having trouble sleeping. And there's so many different things that lead up to that. But
Yeah.
I do want to share that there are some simple things that you can do no matter what's going on in your relationship,
Mhm.
no matter what your experiences are, that you can come out of this on the other side feeling free, which is gaining freedom back in your life.
Mhm. Yeah, and I have some of my thoughts too on it, that I'll share as we go along as well. But do you want to start with the first topic?
Sure.
Okay, so the first one you mentioned were insecurities, which is fairly common, but I'll let you go a little bit deeper into that.
So I think when it comes down to when you're dealing with anxiety in a relationship, especially when it has to deal with the topic of insecurities, I think at the core of this really has to do with some deep down beliefs of how you perceive yourself to the world, how
Hmm.
you perceive yourself to the person you're with in a relationship. Do you look at yourself as an equal, or do you look at yourself as less than to certain specific qualities that they may have, whether it's on the outside, whether
Right.
it might have to do with intelligence, maybe it might have to do with wealth or your physical body, or maybe where they're going in their lives. And there's so many people that maybe as well that they have a partner and they want to go out, and the other person has so many insecurities about it, and their anxieties start rolling in that loop where they start setting limitations and guidelines of what's acceptable or not, or give them ultimatums. And when you get in that anxiety loop when it comes to those sorts of things, you really just get stuck in the fact that, at the core, my self-esteem, my belief is that, I'm replaceable. I'm not good enough. What if they find somebody else? And the problem with that cycle, when it comes to anxiety, you get caught in that rumination
Hmm.
and you can't get out of it. And at the end of the day, if some of you are watching this and maybe you've been in this situation, the one thing that is going to help you to, number one, understand, is this something that I want to continue to do, is I want to evaluate when you go into the situation and into that mind process and you go about doing what you do with your partner. How does it make you feel on a scale of 1 to 10? Do you feel good about yourself? Do you feel good about your partner? Do you feel no stress or anxiety? Do you feel trusting and powerful? Likely not. It's likely on the lowest possible end. And what will happen is, and I hear this all the time with people, is when the person goes out or they go to the gym or they're doing things outside of that core within that safety of the home, right? They feel like they're being left behind, like they're less than, right? And it's almost like that self-fulfilling prophecy of, I just keep digging that hole and I keep, going about it the same way and expecting that some way, some shape or form, one day or another, this is going to pay off. And it never does.
No, it doesn't. And I think that truthfully, um, what I've learned and what has ever helped me cope, and it gets so much easier once you start putting things in perspective. And I teach my women's groups and, my coaching clients this all the time because a common core thing that is making them struggle or, having a hard time moving forward is the ruminating thoughts in their head. And, you once told me as well, is like you have to identify What is a thought and what is reality? What you know to be true and what you know to be fictitious, you know? And you have to evaluate where that energy is flowing. Is it flowing in, factual, thoughts, or is it flowing in that rat race in your brain that are just constant irrational thoughts, right? Where it's just like you're making up stories and then they're almost believable, but there's no truth behind it. And that's where the anxious mind will just run and run and run.
Absolutely. And I think what we all need to remember, and I remember when I was at the peak of my anxiety, I mean, I was desperate and I was willing to almost do anything. And I came across in a Google search bar, and I typed in anxiety programs. And this gentleman from Ireland had this program called Dare and Panic Away. And I thought it was one of those gimmicks and those scams. And I decided to do it anyway because I literally at that point had nothing left to lose.
Hmm.
And I think really what comes down to it, and for me, and maybe for a lot of you who are watching this, is you really first off need to understand what anxiety is.
Right.
Each and every one of us as a human being, we have a protective mechanism that's built in our brain to keep us protected and safe. Okay. And so basically, if you want to keep it in simple terms, anxiety is almost like the protector. It's there to keep you safe, it's scanning for threats. And what you need to do, especially in today's world, is you have to be rational about how you process what things mean to you and ultimately whether or not they're paying off in the way you've been dealing with them.
Absolutely. I 100%, and that's where the investment in yourself comes in, where it's like, where are you going to put those pockets of investment in the reality of your world or in the ruminating thoughts, right? But following that, it's the irrational behaviors. And, I think for a lot of people, you go through life and you have created some irrational behaviors, one form, way, or another. And I always tell people it's when you notice them and you are able to course correct quicker. And that's when you get out of it. But when you continue the pattern and it just becomes once again you on the hamster wheel over and over and over and there's no change, that's when it becomes an issue. You have to identify the behaviors, why they're showing up, what is fueling it for yourself, and learning from them. Because there's only two choices. You will continue on the hamster wheel, it's inevitable, or you course correct.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think what it comes down to, especially with anxiety and rational behaviors, I right away think of like, you know, how you go about solving problems.
Hmm.
I know for myself, when it came to problems that would come up, I would have problems communicating. I would keep it in, and then I would get stuck in that cycle of like rumination and viewing the problem, and all of a sudden it could be at a level 4, and it would become to a 10, and my mind would literally just stay stuck on it for hours and sometimes days at a time.
Hmm.
And the irrational behavior is, really what it comes down to is your responses to certain specific things that happen into your life. What are your responses going to be? They're either going to be rational or they're going to be irrational. And the behaviors that come from that are very crucial in the first few seconds of the meaning that you give what is happening. And right away, the things that you decide to do that are going to solve it. Most people that are stuck in anxiety create irrational behaviors because they feel like they're powerless.
Yeah.
They feel like their anxiety has power over them. They get stuck on all these what ifs. They get stuck on hurting others, what the person's going to think, whether they're going to be validated, whether or not the person's going to listen, whether or not the person's going to, shun them down. And they start playing off all these the what if anxiety loop, the scenarios that go off in your head. And if we just realize that we take our power back by just taking a few breaths, calming our nervous system down, and just realizing when it comes to irrational behaviors, we need to understand that, especially for myself, where I've got caught up in this, not even just in relationships, but business relationships, is that what you have to say matters and what you feel matters. And I think a lot of the time where people get stuck in anxiety is they don't look at themselves as an equal. They're always trying to put the needs of their partner or someone else first. And what you got to start to do is, in order to get out of that loop and change those irrational behaviors of how you respond to things that are happening, is you have to decide right there and then that taking action is the cure all.
Yeah. I have some different points on the anxiety part of it all, because I think what's released me from a lot of it, truthfully, and not that I'm perfect at it by any means, it shows up once in a while, but it's not severe um, by definition. But what I have found, and even in my coaching calls with some clients, and especially one right now, is the purposefulness. I find that we are left with our thoughts more so now than ever. And back in the day, there was no time for it. There was purpose throughout people's day. They had function. They had people depended on them for things. They had to get things done. Like, there was no time to ruminate on, oh, well, I wonder where he's taking the tractor right now. Like, it just was. There was purpose in people's day. They filled it with purposeful meaning things. And what I'm finding is, when I have a client who is in that rat race in their head, it's okay. First thing you need to do is go get a day planner that resonates with you. And I have one that's called the Passion Planner. And I outline my day with purposeful things that I know I need to accomplish, do, and be. That way, my mind is filled with things that are meaningful to me, that are making me better, that have nothing to do with the internal world in my head. And I think that's what is getting lost. And, nowadays, we always say kids don't know what to do when they're bored. They're left with their thoughts. It's because we have lost that function of reality in society. We have created a lazy mindset, if you want, a lack of better words. I'm not too sure. So when you get into relationships now, the function is different. When you have children, the function is different. Back then, everyone had purpose. They lived to be and do, and it's different now. And you notice the mental health is on the rise. Why? Because people wake up and, they're slaves to society, where it's like, it's so easy to go on, social assistance and not be and do, and it's that lack of purpose and function within people's day, I think, as well.
Absolutely. So I think when it comes to irrational behavior, which is how do you break that cycle?
Yeah.
Whether it's you guys having a discussion about money or
Mhm.
family matters or kids or your goals, your ambitions. I think what it comes down to is, anxiety is, acting on anxiety, which is an emotion,
Mhm.
is something that is going to prolong this. It's something that is going to probably not solve anything. It's probably something that is going to allow you to ruminate on the next day, a month, or
Yeah.
maybe 2 months from now, or a year from now. What you really need to do, and this is something that I do now, is whenever I have something that comes up in my relationship, is I actually don't act on it right away. I'll take some time and I'll write down at least 5 things that'll affect my life positively if I act on it within the next 30 minutes. I
Mm.
won't act on it right away, which is the pleasing mind, the avoidance of, of trying to hurt someone's feelings or whatever it might be. So what I try to do is I'll sit down and I'll take 30 minutes and I'll say, okay, within 30 minutes, I need to act. But what are some of the positive things that will come out of this if I do this within the next 30 minutes? Right. And a lot of the times, and I can look back over the past 8 years, and a lot of times when I don't do that, I can get stuck in anxiety for weeks at a time, just
Mhm.
ruminating on that exact same problem because it either didn't go the way I wanted or I didn't say exactly what I wanted because I tried rewording it around a certain way to avoid a problem or a confrontation or a lack of understanding and connection. What you need to do to get out of that loop is you have to just paint one picture for your brain. And that is to take action because the results are going to be positive and nothing less.
Yep. Absolutely. And that's just our next point too, where it's like you ruminate on the past, right? And it's just there's got to come a point where it's like you learn from it, you let it go, and you move forward, right? And that's just the whole thing where, you talk about anxiety and depression. They lead with different parts of you, the past and the present or the future, right? So I definitely, and there's so many like living in the now, being present, even like Eckhart Tolle was a great author. And it's difficult. It's really, really difficult to be in the present and be in the now, because when you are so much in that mindset, the anxiety and the depression will drift little by little by little. But let's go to our last banner here, which is lack of growth. And I'll let you lead with that one, Sam.
Okay, so when I was in the midst of all my anxiety, I couldn't even tell you what growth was. It felt like I was dying every day. I mean, you have your natural anxieties, but I had anxiety disorder where in panic attacks, panic disorder, whatever you want to call it, where literally every day I woke up and it was fight or flight.
Hmm.
From the time I woke my eyes to the time I closed them, and sometimes somewhere in between in the night. And so um, I think really, what was the topic again? I completely gapped out.
That's okay. It was lack of
Lack
growth.
of growth. So I think what causes most people to stay in that anxiety loop is that they honestly, I know for myself, I honestly believe like I couldn't get out of it.
Mm,
I believe like this was going to be my life. And
hmm.
there's so many people, and you probably know them, they're in their 50s, 60s, they've been on anxiety meds, and they still tell you, I have it all the time. It hasn't gone away.
Yeah,
And you know what? If you look at them and you look at their life and you look at the quality of life they're leading, the amount of happiness, joy, and wealth that they have, it isn't very high,
yeah,
right? Because they don't believe that they can come out of it. So they accepted that anxiety will be their life and that's who and what they are,
yeah.
right? So, yes, anxiety is a part of all of us. However, you must learn how to use it, not
That's
let
right.
anxiety use you. So, what you really need to do first off is you need to develop a positive relationship with it. Don't hate it. Recognize that it's there for a reason. That was the
Hmm.
first step for me. Was really just having gratitude and appreciation for what it ever was that I was having anxiety over.
Yeah.
And then the very next thing that I did, is that I decided to shift what the energy was in my body. So what happens with anxiety is it's a form of nervous energy in our body, and it's either derived from fear or it is derived from excitement. And most people that get stuck in anxiety, they get stuck in the fear loop of it. Where what I learned to do with the DARE program and the multiple other things is I started to use it as a tool to create excitement in my body and energy in my body that would fuel me to the next level of my life, which was the growth. How will I grow from this experience? What will I become? How will anxiety help me to become more in my relationship and build more confidence, more
Hmm.
self-respect,
Yeah.
right? For myself and for my partner, because the only way things get better for you is when you get better. And that's a quote with Jim Rohn.
Hmm.
And I will tell you, there is a way through anxiety. And it's exactly what I just said. You have to go through it. It's
Hmm.
always darkest before it's dawn when it comes to anxiety. And there is a way out. And I did it completely without meds. It was a struggle. It was hard. And there were so many times where I felt like giving up. But because I kept persistent, but because I focused on the growth of who I would become coming out of this experience and the effect it would have on my kids, on my relationship, and all the other different things, that's what kept me driven.
Hmm. Yeah. And I always say, like, I have a client right now who's struggling with accumulated stress in their life. And I said, the one thing you have to do is welcome it.
Yeah.
You have to open your arms and say, I welcome all of the stress that enters my life because I am gaining the tools to deal with it. And that's what you have to do. You have to start creating that bank of tools and use what you know or can in certain moments of stress created scenarios. You can't, the more you block it, the more you fear it and the more you resist it and the more stress that will accumulate. Stress is inevitable. We have to think of the facts. It's inevitable. But you invite it into your life so that way you have the tools and the function to deal with it on a day-to-day basis. And that's why I say, the planner's great where it's like you organize yourself and you fit those stress moments within your day and then you accumulate the tools of how you're going to maneuver it. So that way you're decreasing your stress, you're using your tools, but you're also organizing it so that it's functional. So I want to show a post here. I don't know if you can see
Yeah.
it. So it says, man is not worried by real problems so much as by his imagined anxieties about real problems.
And so that really ties into this. Anxiety is focusing on the uncertainty, which is always looking into the future, right? So
Hmm.
you're almost imagining problems that don't even exist in your own reality yet,
Hmm.
right? So your power is, it's like, you mentioned Eckhart Tolle and the power
Yep.
of the now is that's your superpower,
Yeah.
guys. Like that's your superpower, especially being a guy and dealing with anxiety, even just talking to you right now about this, like there's a reason why men's suicide rate is 3 times higher than women because we're taught to be tough and not talk about how we feel. So even just sharing this is a bit of uncertain for me because your fear of judgment or you're not man enough or whatever things are. But you have to realize the only way through anxiety is to accept that
Hmm.
the only way through is that you must grow.
Yeah.
You know, in order to feel fulfillment in life, one of the most connected needs to that is growth. Without growth,
Hmm.
you will die inside. And literally, if you aren't growing with your anxiety, you are dying inside.
Yeah.
There's no other way to put it.
Yeah. 100% agree. So here's the last quote is anxiety is love's greatest killer. It makes others feel as you might when a drowning man holds on to you. You want to save him, but you know he will strangle you with his panic. Go.
Yeah, that's a great quote because people who suffer from anxiety love safety. They love
Mm,
certainty. They love complacency. They don't like to leave the house. They don't like to do anything that's outside of the comfort zone.
right.
And that will be the destruction of you. You know, like I said earlier, and I learned this from the Dare group that Barry McDonough designed. Is he always said it's always darkest before dawn. It's always darkest before dawn. You have to push outside
Yeah.
whatever you're experiencing because you will limit the amount of growth in your relationship. You will limit not only the amount of joy and happiness you experience, but also the person that you're with. And you
Hmm.
have to realize that you need to take ownership for this. Look, we all get a deck of cards in life that, we might not like, but it's how you play them that matters. And shit, I'm telling you, like, I used to just wake up in the middle of the night or drive and be like, why me? Why? I don't drink, I don't smoke, I try to do good things in life. And here I am struggling, with his anxiety. Like, what the hell did I ever do?
Mm,
You know what? It turned out to be the greatest gift ever because
I
now
know.
you and I are on here sharing the things that we've done to grow from our hardships.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So anxiety for me is one of the greatest teachers that's ever come into my life.
Yeah. And people make them your superpowers, right? Whatever your faults were or your struggles, they turn into your superpowers. And that's where so many stories come from, where you hear a lot of like The Rock, for example, he was broke, and his superpower was like, I don't want to be broke anymore. And he worked hard at it. And some people will look at people and be like, oh, it's easy for them. They have it in them. Everybody has it in them. You just got to dig deep. You got to dig real deep.
Oh, I agree. And
But not everybody has that quality.
no, I agree. I agree.
So,
I think it's very key, like you said about what you said about him, The Rock, but it's also key. Like if you're suffering anxiety, like, you have to accept that I don't want to be comfortable anymore. I don't want to
Mm,
be complacent anymore. I don't want to be unhappy anymore. I don't want to be miserable anymore. I don't want to be stuck in anxiety anymore. I don't want to be
mhm.
stuck in sadness and helpless.
Yeah,
Like the only way out is through.
yeah,
And that is
absolutely.
exactly what Gina had said. Some things that we would recommend is fill your calendar. People
Yes.
who get stuck in anxiety, I can tell you right now, if I look at their daily schedule or their weekly schedule, they have nothing in there,
Nothing.
nothing planned out. You need to have a planned out week of what time you wake up, what you're going to eat, when you're going to work out, when you're going to journal, when you're going to focus on gratitude, when you're going to do something that makes you grow and be uncomfortable.
Mhm.
You have to be regimented with that.
Yeah, yeah, until you get on your path for sure. Yeah. But I think that was a good sentiment to end on, Sam. What do you
Yeah,
think?
I agree 100%. And to
Yeah.
me, anxiety is a spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
Guys, don't look at it like something that's the end. It literally can create a new beginning for you, your partner, and everyone around you.
Yeah, 100%. And on that note, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. If you have any stories as well, what you've struggled with regarding anxiety or any mental health issues, please don't forget to share. There are people that are experiencing the same thing, and there's a commonality between likeness and working through it together. So, on that note, this is the relationship series talking about the matters of the heart and mind. Ciao for now.